Good evening. Welcome to the October 16th, 2023 Troy City Council meeting. This evening, we're honored to have at her last City Council meeting, Councilmember Edna Abraham to provide our invocation. So please rise for the invocation and remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance.
Lord, we stand before you, this community of Troy, many people of many faiths and many languages, but all of us united in praise for you, all feeling the warmth of your presence, all basking in your unconditional love, all thankful for your bringing this community together in the council chambers in harmony and in goodwill. Lord, we ask you to help our city council members here in Troy to make sound decisions, to act with civility, fortitude, and strength when deliberating on difficult issues, to use discernment to gain understanding, to apply wisdom in making decisions that benefit all residents and future generations. Lord, we ask you to help all of those at the council table to act in a manner befitting your name, to be humble as we serve our community and serve you, to show compassion for our constituents as you show compassion for us, to lead as we would want to be led, with integrity, dignity, and respect, to embrace our community's diversity, knowing that our differences are the source of our strength. Lord Almighty, you are greater than all. We come to you humbly with hearts full of love and trust. We seek your guidance in all things so that our city and our residents may grow and flourish. In your name we pray, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Abraham. I'll officially call the October 16th, 2023 Troy City Council meeting to order and ask for the roll call from Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Abraham?
Here.
Councilmember Brooks?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Here.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
All present this evening. First up are certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have one. C1 is the 2023 Troy Family Days update. And the update will be presented by Karen Greenwood, the chair, and Olivia McLaughlin, executive director of the Troy Community Foundation. Looks like a big reveal is coming.
It is indeed. Good evening. My name is Olivia McLaughlin, Executive Director of the Troy Community Foundation. Thank you, Mayor Baker, City Council members, for welcoming us here again for our annual update. We're pleased to report that Troy Family Days was a great success yet again this year, and we'll sort of dig into that. I think we have slides.
We do have a PowerPoint.
Maybe?
Well, we'll just talk.
Yeah.
Oh,
Here we go.
yeah.
All right, so just to start off with a little bit of a snapshot of, I think you can go to the next slide, please. Can we do that? Okay. So our foundation officers. So with me today, to my left, Karen Greenwood is our board chair. Jeanette Smith-Quatilla is our vice chair, and we're actually joined here tonight, our treasurer, Dan Duggan, Secretary John Boguth, and we do have another board member at large, Doug Tietz, with us here in the audience. Thank you for joining us. And our advisory board, led by Valina Allison and a number of our community business leaders that I'm sure a number of you would recognize if we had a full list here. And then in addition to myself, I work part-time for the foundation, working on the day-to-day operations. The Troy Family Days Committee is led by our co-chairs Pete Sherman and Al Lindsay. So this is a roughly 20-member leadership committee, all volunteer, who takes care of every aspect in planning for the Troy Family Days Festival, everything from booking entertainment to logistics and children's acts and the talent for International Day. And I'd certainly be remiss to not mention that several of the City of Troy staff are involved and partner with us, most notably Department of Public Works Director Kurt Bovenseep, who is the city liaison to the Troy Family Days Committee, and he's really an integral part of our committee, and he and his family are longtime supporters of the festival. So we're grateful for that. A number of our partner organizations that are non-endowed, we have some funds that we manage for them. We actually have a number of those that support the senior citizens in the Troy community. We have our Friends of Troy Seniors, FOTS, the Senior Home Assistance Repair Program, or SHARP for short, and the Senior Computer Lab. So those are just some examples in addition to the 14 endowments that we do have. And that list is growing. That's something that is one of our main goals for the foundation in terms of growing that piece, investing in the community. So next slide. So speaking of our endowments, so this is obviously reinvesting in our community. I'm just noting to Karen, this is actually a wrong number in here. We had two different versions, but the good news is that we currently just have over 780,000 in endowments. And so that number, this is correct though. So with the 5% annual distribution rate, which would be optional, this could really be a potential distribution of over $325,000 over the next 10 years if these endowments should choose to take this distribution and reinvest it in the causes that they establish the endowments for. So anyone can start an endowment with an initial deposit of $10,000. That is something we try to get the word out in the community, build awareness for that. We have current endowments with families, businesses. We have endowed scholarships. We have organizations that have endowments. And again, we're trying to grow that. We're going to mention in a bit Troy Charity Night, which is one of our vehicles to grow that piece. So if you're listening, Troy, if you're interested in starting endowment, give me a call and let's talk. So next slide. So Troy Family Days. So our goals for this year and obviously the years to come, pretty simple. We want to hear feedback from the community and the organizations that we partner with, and we want more community involvement. Obviously, we're looking for success in the event, both in terms of the community attendance, financially, for the community, for the foundation. But one of the things that we do look for is feedback from, the pillars in our community, the partners that we work with, both nonprofits and the business organizations. So this year, a few of the new things that we had as far as programming, cutest pet contests, turns out people want to send more pictures of their pets than they do their cutest babies. The DPW brought their popular Touch a Truck event to Gene M. Stein Park on Thursday afternoon, which was a great hit, obviously, with the kids in the area. Dan the Creature Man's always great for bringing his live animals to our programming. We had our second 5K and fun run on Sunday morning, so we were proud to be able to grow that piece. We had quite a bit more runners than we did last year, and we were really proud to partner. We had the two of our biggest teams were Ark of Oakland County and Walsh College here in both organizations in Troy. So that's a great piece of it. If you think about, running next year, you have plenty of time to train and pull together your friends and family for that. We added a pancake breakfast hosted by the Rotary Club of Troy. We had several requests for demonstrations for robotics teams through elementary, middle, and high schools. So we need to figure out a way to grow that piece of it. We had the naturalization ceremony that we were able to integrate into our opening ceremony, bringing in new U.S. citizens, swearing them in with the mayor and a number of the city council members. That's a really special piece for us kicking off Thursday. Although Thursday morning, my personal favorite, the big event, which is our special needs students program, we open that up to hundreds of special needs students and their chaperones Thursday morning without the 25 to 30,000 people that come throughout the weekend, and they have a chance to experience the festival on their own. And then last but not least, our Troy Historic Village, the sponsors of the Scarecrow Row were able to bring what you see at the Historic Village over to Troy Family Days for the weekend, and that's a very popular thing in our community. So I'm going to turn over to Karen to dig in a little bit more to our results and numbers for the year.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for allowing us this opportunity. We're really excited this year. We had a phenomenal year. Weather is always an amazing thing. I think, as I've mentioned before to many of you and also to the public, this event cost us about $114,000 before our first person comes through the gate. Nobody is waiting for us to, hand out money. When they get there, all of that money is spent, whether it's porta potties or fencing or entertainment. They don't care if it rains. So if someone could go to the next slide, I don't know who has it, so I don't know who to look at. Okay, so here's a little bit of information. We are up 7.6% in rides revenue, which is interesting. So let me share with you that the ride company is a very seasoned Michigan company, and he warned us that we would be down between 10 and 15% because they have been all year round. So to see our rides revenue up is pretty fantastic. Admission revenue is up 13%. Usually those numbers are a little bit closer. So what that told us is that we had more people come through the gate that maybe didn't participate in rides, which is showing that we're actually hitting some of our goals, making this a larger community event and giving people something more to do than just go on rides and walk down a midway. Our booth sales, we have a little bit less real estate this year, so we sold out of our booth space. We actually had a waiting list. Our food vendors were also sold out, and our corporate sponsors this year, even though we did not have a lead sponsor, we actually did better in corporate sponsors by asking for less money from more people, and the checks came in. So our expenses were up 18%, which we prepared for. So when we set our budget back in February, we knew that our expenses would be up, and we were within $2,000 of our overall budget. So we were very pleased with the outcome of just the financial side of it. Okay. All right. So we have a couple different things we want to talk about. So the new big event, I want to give you some numbers. I'm a numbers girl. So the big event, we were at max capacity. We had over 450 children and families were served. And the great part about this event is first of all, the festival is closed. We have a couple rides open. There's no money exchanged. And we partner with the rides company, and they open a couple of their vendors. So the kids can go get a cotton candy or a popcorn, and then we serve them lunch. It is a fabulous, fabulous event. We actually just received an email today with 32 handwritten thank yous from the schools and students, and I think everybody should have to read them because it's pretty amazing. We talked about naturalization. 20 new citizens were sworn in, and then for International Day, we had so many acts that wanted to perform. We actually put some on Saturday, and now we're having conversation as to whether it's just International Weekend, right? So what does that look like in our future? So as we're starting to take the feedback and kind of chronologically putting it in order what we need to do next. We had about 30,000 people come through, and like I mentioned, food and vendor space was limited, and we were absolutely at capacity for that. We did go out this past year. Our board of directors sat down and talked about security and safety. We are all aware of the Berkeley Festival that was closed down in the first day, and how we could make sure that the citizens of Troy remain safe. We feel like it's our job and our responsibility, and we hired and partnered with Fortis Security, and they did a fantastic job. So there was definitely more eyes in the sky, and there were more uniformed officers working. We think it's important to keep the citizens of Troy safe. I think they deserve it, and I think they expect it. This event also had, we have 20 of our core members, and then we had about 200 other volunteers that were there. Okay, next slide, please. Here's a couple of our sponsors. We could not do this event without these sponsors. We also thank the City of Troy. The City of Troy not only lends us this beautiful piece of property to use, but also pays for our fireworks. And things like, you'd be surprised how expensive like trash cans are and picnic tables. And so we are very thankful to Parks and Rec for helping us with all of that. Some of the goals of of the funds that we raise. We do organizational grants. We're in the middle of a grant cycle. It actually just closed on October 15th. Normally, we have about 13 people or organizations asking for grants. This year, we have 23. This is just one grant cycle. We do 2 a year, and so we're really trying to figure out how we're going to spread out the money that we've allocated for that. We also work with the city. I don't know if you remember, but in the past, we did a small, what we would consider a placemaking grant with bike repair stations for the Troy trails. So we do that. And then we also do Troy Charity Night. This is a new event. We're going to be going into our third year next year. And it's a reverse fundraiser. I know that sounds a little bit nutty, but basically we allocate $20,000 in funds to bring endowments to us. We help them raise awareness, we help them create fundraisers, we do a voting process, and everybody leaves. We only recognize 3, and everyone leaves a winner. They either leave with $5,000, $6,000, or $4,000. It is a fabulous event. We are now looking for a new venue because we have grown out of the space we're in. We also put money in our operations fund, and then we have a reserve fund for family days. I hate to say it, but the weather plays a very, very big part of this, and we know we have to plan for a rainy day. So we're doing that as well. Next slide, please. Some of our partners, we partner with Troy Police, and also, I don't know if Lieutenant Hall is here, but Lieutenant Hall was very helpful in setting up our emergency action plan. He's actually already got back to us with things that we can improve for next year. He wrote a fantastic executive summary. We are very happy to be working with the City of Troy, not only with the police department, but also with fire, to really pull our resources together, to not have overlapping services, but to make sure that we've got the festival covered. We switched up the location just so that our enforcement officers were actually in the place where the most action was happening. We work with the library and the Rotary, Kiwanis, the Nature Center, the Historic Village, and Global Troy. So we work with everybody. I can't stress enough that we could not put on an event like this without the community support that we get. So thank you for all of that. Okay, next slide. So here's a little bit, I just did this a little out of order. So this is just some of the plans that this is how we spend our funds going into the future. I'm happy to take any questions on that, if anyone has any. And then we have one more graph in there. There we are, and we have a special announcement. We are really, we have talked about this for a really long time, a performance art stage in this arena that we're building over at Stein Park, where Troy Days is, on this beautiful piece of property. We've been talking about it since before I became part of the foundation. I know that Kurt's been dreaming about it. I know that the council's talked about it, and we would like to kick that project off with a $100,000 check today. Oh. Yes. So. We could build a performing arts stage on this property, and something that we can all use that would be covered with sound and music, and maybe a place where we could move the movies in the park and just be a community asset for all of us to love and enjoy for all time. So that concludes my report. Usually there's some questions, so I want to make sure that I answer them if anyone has any.
Okay, I'm going to start with, not a question, I got to start first. That's very exciting.
We're really excited.
That's a big deal, and I know that the foundation. I can't remember what year it started. About 8 years ago. Is that right, Troy? Was it 16? Yes, almost 7-8 years ago. I'm amazed at the growth in these past 7 years, truly, and what you're doing for the community. I know it started out with good leadership, and I know Doug's here tonight, and he did a lot of work, and he's passed it on to, he's still part of it, but he's passed it on to the two of you, especially now, who have really taken it and run at a time when there's just a lot going on in the world, a lot going on in the city, and it's exciting to see all this growth, frankly, and the endowments grow, and the use of the funds put back in the community, which is what it really is about. So it's wonderful to see that. As far as this big check, it's very exciting. When can it be built? I mean, I know there's obviously a lot more involved in that.
I mean, I'd love to get out there with a hammer tomorrow, but I don't think they'll let me. So
I do know that there's obviously it is something that's been talked about for a long time. In fact, the early renderings of the Gene M. Stein Park included a band shell type feature, and so I'm assuming city staff will run with this concept and look for funding in other places, and perhaps there'll be, good news coming to us in the near future. But that really is a wonderful give back, and I'm very thankful, obviously, and I'm sure all of us are, that you're here tonight with not only a great presentation report, but some exciting news at the end of it. So thank you. And Troy Family Days, we talked a little bit about it a couple meetings ago before you're here, so I said, they're gonna be. I want to make sure. I mean, it really was an amazing event this year. It is every year in its own way, but this year it just seemed to click on a lot of different levels.
Well,
And
I think that as we continue our mission to bring more community events, and we've asked for a lot of feedback, we listen to our committee members who have been coming to this event for 40 years. What did you like? Why did you come to it? I mean, we got a suggestion that we should bring back a pie eating contest. I mean, we've seen a lot of crazy things. We're not going to go kill an ox and eat the ox, but there's a lot of things that, listen, that's what they did 53 years ago. I'm not kidding.
Mayor Pro Tem's trying to put me in a dunk tank. You know that?
So, I mean, we're taking all suggestions, and we're like bringing back the pancake breakfast. That was a big deal, and Rotary is 100% in on it because they consider that part of their community service as well. So I don't know about a parade for those people who keep writing down parade on the list, but we're working on it.
Well, we thanked Kurt and some other city staff who did a lot of work at that previous meeting, so it's a great opportunity to have you here to thank you. And I mean, the two of you were everywhere for every hour of every day during the whole process as well. And I know that this is not your full-time, certainly not your full-time job, and I know it's not your full-time either, but your commitment to the community and to the foundation as a whole is pretty spectacular, and I'm really thankful for it. So I actually personally don't have any questions about anything you presented. It was very thorough. Was there any questions? Mayor Pro Tem, I think I saw you acknowledge her.
Thank you. And yes, I am trying to get the dunk tank, so we'll work on that. So just first, thank you. Thank you. Congratulations on a successful Troy Days. The thing is, and my son is here tonight, my mother-in-law, she flew in from Romania the very day of the naturalization ceremony. So we missed that, but she came to International Day. And she was blown away by the beauty of the diversity of our city that she saw that day. It really left a lasting impact on her. So again, I'm grateful to Lisa Bika-Grodsky and Global Troy and all those amazing partners of that you have that a part of what you do.
Awesome.
Sort of question, comment, you know, ladies, both of you, I'm very passionate about finding synergies between community foundations and municipalities, and that I actually presented some research with the Michigan Women in Municipal Government on this. And, you know, so a question of that, given all of the amazing growth of the foundation, do you have chances to partner or meet with other colleagues at other community foundations to find what they're doing? Because when I presented this research, the room was full of examples just like this, like things like this, where amazing projects are able to get across the finish line because there is a partnership between a local-based community foundation and the municipality.
I think we're 100% open to it, and I'm constantly looking up what other foundations are doing for benchmarking. Where are they getting? Who are they partnering with? Is it private business? Is it local government? So yes, we're in. Invite us. We will. We have both been attending a lot more nonprofit events just to see what they're doing, where they're getting their money, and also how they're spending it and what protocols they're putting in place. So definitely a lot of benchmarking right at the moment.
Thank you. Additional questions? Comments?
All right, awesome. Thank you.
Go ahead and get that check to maybe Mark.
Mark, this will not fit in the ATM though, I'm sorry.
Thank you both. Good to see you. That concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have no carryover items this evening. We do have a public hearing. E1 is a public hearing rezoning request, file number ZJPLN 2023-0016. Proposed Encore Development rezoning, east side of Todd, south of Big Beaver, PIN 88-20-29-226-019 and -020, Section 29, from R1C, one family residential, and P, vehicular parking, to BB, Big Beaver zoning district, and that'll be introduced by our Community Development Director, Brent Savedon. Good evening, Brent.
Good evening, Mayor Baker, City Council. The wireless mouse does not appear to be working, so I'm going to ask the magic eye in the sky to please advance to the next slide. Thank you, Dave. For background on this property, the pointer works. That's good. This property is located at the corner of Todd and Butterfield. It's about 1.5 acres in area, and the petitioner is seeking to rezone it from R1C, one family residential, and P parking to Big Beaver. You see it here outlined in red. Next slide. This shows ownership. The parcels outlined at the top along Big Beaver are owned by the same owner as is requesting rezoning. The parcels outlined in red are the parcels that are under consideration this evening. And then The holdout here in blue is zoned O office. It's owned by someone entirely different, and they're not requesting rezoning this evening. And based on numerous conversations I've had with the applicant has reached out to this person to ask if the owner wanted to participate. He said he did not, and it will not be affected directly by this rezoning. It's going to stay O office. Next slide. This is a snippet of the master plan, the future land use map in the master plan. You see the location is indicated by the yellow star. This is the Big Beaver zoning classification. This property has been classified in this classification since 2008. You've all seen the development that's gone on in Big Beaver since the Big Beaver district was created in the zoning district in 2011. This master plan classification permits and encourages mixed use. It permits commercial, office, residential, and retail uses. There are design standards associated with this zoning district that requires building placement close to the street, require transparency requirements, and allow for significant height. Next slide. As I indicated earlier, the current zoning is P parking and R1C, one family residential. Current zoning would permit development of the yellow piece, the single family residential, to residential uses. And currently the P parking district only permits parking for associated uses. It's very limiting in terms of the development potential, and the zoning is inconsistent with the master plan. Next slide. This is a traditional rezoning application, or what we refer to internally as a straight rezoning. The applicant did not voluntarily offer any conditions associated with the property. He just wanted to rezone it and then consider his options once it's rezoned. If it were to be rezoned, all the uses permitted in the underlying zoning district based on the site type and the street type would be permitted. And if it were to be rezoned, any development that came forward in the future would be reviewed by the Planning Commission, either by a preliminary site plan or special use approval with a preliminary site plan. Next slide, please. These are the standards for rezoning. You've seen these many times. I'm not going to read them, but this is what the standards that are to be considered for rezoning. They're in section 16.03C. Next slide, please. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this item September 12th, and they recommended approval 6-3. Next slide. And I can answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Brent. Any questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga.
Thank you, Mayor. Is it correct, Brent, that if this rezoning is approved, as you said, it goes to Planning Commission, they would then have the site plan, but it would not come to us?
Yeah, once you rezone it, the next step in development would be going to the Planning Commission with an application.
But it would not come to us?
That's
then?
correct. Unless it was under the Big Beaver zoning classification, it would not come to the City Council.
Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. I know adjacent to this property there are, residential. It's not single-family homes, but there are residents who live in that area. Have they provided any feedback, or have they said anything about this?
No. It's under construction now.
Oh.
There was no comment that was provided.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, it's a public hearing, so I'm going to open the public hearing. I don't see anybody has signed up for E1 to speak on this matter, but that doesn't prohibit you from speaking. If you'd like to share any thoughts you have on E1 for this rezoning request, now's your chance. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and I'll ask for someone to bring the resolution to the table. Councilmember Erickson-Galt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move E1, public hearing, rezoning request, file number Z, JPLN 2023-0016, proposed Encore Development rezoning, east side of Todd, south of Big Beaver, PIN 88-20-20-226-019 and -020, Section 29, from R1C, one family residential, and P vehicular parking to BB Big Beaver zoning district as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Erickson Galt, supported by Councilmember Abraham, that we approve E1 public hearing rezoning request, file number ZJPLN 2023-0016, proposed Encore Development rezoning east side of Todd, south of Big Beaver, PIN 88-20-29-226-019 and -020, Section 29, from R1C, one family residential, and P vehicular parking to BB Big Beaver zoning district as printed in the agenda packet. Discussion. Councilmember Hamilton.
Yeah, this seems pretty straightforward to me. It fits the area. It's right in the middle of the Big Beaver zone. It's adjacent to the Big Beaver zone. Property owner owns similar property. We haven't heard any opposition. Planning Commission recommended approval, so I see no reason not to support it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Thank you, Mayor. So I appreciate this perspective. I think, yes, if it comes to just a straight rezoning, it is a matter of, it makes sense that this moves to a Big Beaver zoning designation. As I did listen to the Planning Commission meeting, and I really valued that helpful deliberations that happened, is there were questions made about, it's hard to, if it's not a conditional rezone, if it's not coming to us with a sense of more what it actually will be, do we have assurance that they will be true conformity and true compatibility, some of the elements that are part of those actual standards? And as much as it does make sense I can see the argument to, just do that simple rezoning. We have a great planning commission, they'll dig into it. At the same time, I don't think that this is any parcel of land. Not that any parcel of land in Troy is any parcel of land. But this parcel of land, in my opinion, is in one of the most important areas where we're going to see some of the most important change in the city of Troy, not just in 10 years, but in the next 20 years, as we're going to see Big Beaver undergo a lot of transformation from office space to more residential and mixed use. And so therefore, for me, and knowing that if we approve a rezone, it goes to Planning Commission, it will be in their hands to make a decision, and their amazing body. But we're going to have more of these. There's going to be more change happening on Big Beaver. And at the end of the day, if residents aren't happy, they come to us on council. And at the end of the day, I am elected to represent residents, and they do have a right to be angry if what they're seeing doesn't make sense. And given that there's going to be a lot of transformation, I personally, as a representative of the people, I want to have a voice in that. And I do want this to be able to, if it was a conditional rezoning, it would come to us on council, and I would like it to come to council. I think that's important because of the exact place where this is and the sort of transformation we are going to have on Big Beaver over the next decade and 2 decades. For that reason, wanting to see a conditional rezone, I won't be supporting this.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I just want to touch briefly. I think this is consistent with the master plan. I think it satisfies the conditions in 16.03. I hear what Mayor Pro Tem has just stated, and I have a little bit different view of it. I think that certainly zoned as vehicular parking and single-family residential, there's nothing that's going to happen there, and I think that, or nothing of value that would enhance that area. So I think zoning it to be a Big Beaver district, which is consistent with the remaining parcels in that area, it makes more sense for me personally. So I am supportive of this, and I have a lot of faith in our planning department and our planning commission that when a development proposal comes before them, it'll be properly vetted and it will be consistent with the vision for what our master plan says now, what the future upcoming update will say, and also knowing what the owner of the property just to the north of that property that's right up against Big Beaver, the quality development work and redevelopment work that's done there, I'm very confident that what will happen eventually at this new rezoned parcel will be of great value for the city. So I am supportive. Anyone else? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
No.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes public hearings this evening. Next up is public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. My understanding is that Jane Sager inexplicably signed up for the future public comment, but her agenda item actually is on the, what she's here to speak about them tonight is on the agenda. So Ms. Sager, it's your turn to come forward for public comment. Our rules state that you have 3 minutes. There's a timer here in front of you. When the light turns yellow, you have 1 minute left, and when it turns red, that means time is up.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the council. My name is Jane Sager. I live at 1740 Westwood here in Troy. I've been a member of the Animal Control Appeal Board for over 40 years and has served as the chairman for more than 25. My appointment to this board was up for renewal in September. Early in the month, I went, filled out the form, and applied to be reappointed to this board. On October 2nd, I received a phone call from the Mayor Pro Tem. She stated that the City Council has decided that, quote, new blood is needed on the city boards and committees, so the council will not reappoint me to the Animal Control Appeal Board. She added, thank you for your service. I was left with the feeling that this decision was based upon my age, because the Animal Control Appeal Board has been working with only 3 members for almost a year, and the council has already appointed 2 new members earlier this year. I understand that the Animal Control Appeal Board is a minor and not a very vital board in the city, but it was created to give our citizens a recourse if they disagree with the rulings of the officers and staff should they be denied a permit for keeping farm animals. It seems odd to me that the council would want to make more than half of the members of this board new blood. These people will be in the position of not knowing the context and procedures that have been used to maybe allow a citizen to follow their family's desire to have a different or unusual pet, but still maintain standards of the city's codes. I'm sorry to say, the thought occurs to me that it feels like politicians who want to impress their constituents by impressing them with getting rid of the old guard. I hope this is not the reason behind why myself and other older volunteers have not been reappointed to the boards and the committees. I must say, I'm very disappointed in this council. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Sager. That concludes those that have signed up for public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Now is an opportunity for City Council or City Administration to respond or reply. Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm happy to reply because we had a conversation. And to be clear, it was me. This is my decision as Mayor Pro Tem. It's not council. Council will vote tonight, but it was me. And I thank you for your 40 years of service, Ms. Seeger. That is amazing. We thank you for 40 years on that board. That is wonderful service on a board in a city that has changed drastically in 40 years, as you probably have seen in front of your eyes. That is amazing and wonderful service. We just felt it was an opportunity as your fellow colleague. The other positions were vacant, so there was no one else. They were vacant or someone requested not to be renewed. And in your position, it was an opportunity to, again, we honor those 40 years, but to see there's other people who also are eager to serve in the city as well, and to just be able to give, as we're term limited. At some point, we can't be reelected whether we want to or not. So just to provide in our city that has changed over 40 years, different folks who express interest in serving. But I thank you for those 40 years of service. They mean so much.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga. Any additional response? I'm going to reserve my comments for when we get to the agenda item. That concludes City Council and City Administration response and reply. There are no postponed items, so we move on to regular business. I-1 is board and committee appointments. There are no mayoral appointments this evening, so we'll move on to city council appointments. I'll turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crango.
Thank you, Mayor. So I will move the appointment of Michelle Haight to the Animal Control Appeal Board for the term expiring September 30th, 2026.
City Clerk Dixon, if there's no second,
Then the motion dies.
can I make an amendment?
To be clear, for the council appointments, any council member can nominate someone to a board. The mayoral appointments are the only ones that are limited to the mayor, but any other council member could nominate someone as well.
But not the mayor as a member of council.
Correct.
Anyone like to make another nomination? I guess not. Perhaps it's not the appropriate time. Assuming there's no second, this nomination or this appointment won't be brought to the table this evening, which means I technically don't have an opportunity to speak on the comments I was reserved. But I would like to I just want to say, Ms. Sager, my understanding of the facts are a little different than as were explained tonight. I wasn't part of a conversation, obviously, so I can't speak to that. But I think you've seen that the nomination of your replacement wasn't seconded this evening, so there's some discussion that needs to be had among members of council. So thank you for coming forward. We appreciate it. That concludes city council appointments. We'll move on to I-2, board and committee nominations. I have no mayoral nominations this evening. I guess there could be a city council nomination if someone chose.
There's none available, and I'll pass on this.
I wish someone on city council would nominate Ms. Sager to continue in that role, but that's not my role this evening. There's a long history of if people want to be renominated and they're doing good work to continue with that, but we can talk about it at a future meeting, I suppose. Councilmember Hoderick?
Mayor, I will go ahead and nominate to the Animal Control Appeal Board, Jane Sager, for the term expiring 9/30/2026.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hoderick, supported by Councilmember Abraham, that we approve the renomination of Jane Sager to the Animal Control Appeal Board for the term expiring September 30th, 2026. Any discussion? I'll just continue. I understand this is a little bit awkward for the council appointments. Usually they're much more straightforward process. Typically, my policy has been for 8 years, if someone wants to be reappointed and they have done a consistent job and there haven't been any complaints, that's usually how they've been renominated. I understand that's not a firm requirement, but every now and then these issues do come up. So I'm happy to support the renomination of Jane Sager, and I will be voting to approve that. Any other discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crango?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you for your service, although it'll be the next meeting before you're officially appointed. That concludes city council nominations this evening. We do have a request for a closed session, so I'll move I3, be it resolved that Troy City Council shall meet in closed session as permitted by MCL 125.268E, Blanchard versus Troy.
Support. That was
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve I3 request for closed session as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crango?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion carries. After the conclusion of the public agenda, we will recess and then pick back up in closed session as permitted by I3, and I expect we'll adjourn from in there this evening. Next up is I4, bid waiver, less lethal Larry dummy targets, Troy Police Department. That'll be introduced by Sergeant Dan Galick, Police Training Sergeant. Good evening. I'm glad I realized this agenda item was on here because I saw a lot of police activity in the back, and then I realized, oh wait, they're here for a good reason. So
Good evening, Mayor Baker and City Council. We would like to purchase 6 less lethal targets. They're titled Less Lethal Larry. They're a sole source from Dummies Unlimited. These targets are rubber-based, and they would allow us to train on all of our less lethal systems, including less lethal shotgun beanbag rounds, tasers, OC spray, pepper ball. Allows us to have a realistic targeting system for the weapons that we would like to deploy. The total cost would be $11,413.
Thank you, Sergeant. Any questions? Someone like to move the resolution? Councilmember Erickson Gall.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move I-4, bid waiver, less lethal Larry dummy targets, Troy Police Department, as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Erickson Gall, supported by Councilmember Brooks, that we approve I-4 bid waiver, less lethal Larry dummy targets, Troy Police Department, as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant. Next up is I-5, Emergency Medical Services, EMS Technical Assistance Services. And that'll be introduced by Bob Bruner, our Deputy City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to put our current emergency medical services in context by telling a story that begins in 1956. Now, I can cover 67 years in less than 7 minutes, so bear with me. For those of you that read the memo, I got some new content, and for those of you who maybe haven't read up on it, I hope this will be informative and educational. So the story begins in 1956 for 2 reasons that are probably coincidental. The first reason is that Price Funeral Home began providing ambulance services for the newly incorporated city of Troy in 1956. It may seem strange today that a funeral home provided ambulance service, but this was common at the time when the goal was to transport the patient to the hospital as soon as possible rather than providing pre-hospital emergency services the way we do today. Price Funeral Home provided ambulance services for Troy and several other communities in Oakland and Macomb counties for 18 years between 1956 and 1974. The second reason is Dr. Peter Saffer, who is known as the father of cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR. He's also one of the founding parents of emergency medical services. And in 1956, he conducted a series of experiments on paralyzed human volunteers, which could not be replicated today, and demonstrated that mouth-to-mouth breathing could maintain oxygen levels in non-breathing patients, and showed that even lay people could effectively perform mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to help save lives. At the time before CPR was created, they basically lay you on the ground and flop your arms up and down. In 1957, he wrote the book, The ABC of Resuscitation, which established the basis for CPR training. And it was actually 16 years later, in 1973, that the American Heart Association adopted the ABC system for training the public. And so really, training the public in CPR didn't happen until the 70s. Unfortunately, in 1966, Saffer's 11-year-old daughter fell into an asthmatic-induced coma and died while Saffer was away at a medical conference. Saffer became convinced that lay people, not just doctors, had to be involved in resuscitation if lives were to be saved. And that same year, 1966, Congress passed the Highway Safety Act and established the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. The administration was charged with improving EMS systems by administering grants for ambulance purchases, communication systems, and training programs. Now, it may not be immediately obvious why National Highway Safety Act and EMS are related, but automobile accidents account for a good number of the demand for emergency medical services. So in 1967, Saffer helped establish Freedom House Ambulance Service in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to demonstrate that pre-hospital emergency medical services could be provided by trained paramedics and that it didn't require doctors. In the next year, in 1968, 2008, the first 911 call was made from Haleyville, Alabama City Hall and answered by the city's police station. It's a 911 system that we all take for granted today. Isn't really that old. Was established in 1966, and the Alabama Telephone Company kind of went out of its way to beat the AT&T or Bell, as it was at the time, in the national rollout. And national 911 rollout didn't really happen until later. And then finally in 1973, Congress enacted the EMS Systems Act, and that act provided funding for the development of regional EMS systems and authorized a program of research in emergency techniques, methods, devices, and delivery. So meanwhile, back here in Troy, the city's population grew from 19,000 people in 1960 to 67,000 people in 1980. It was 2 decades of huge growth. And in 1980, the city began contracting for advanced life support ambulance services. Fast forward to 1992, and the city conducted a demonstration project utilizing a dedicated first responder unit for 12 hours a day for 14 days. And based on the success of that demonstration project, in 1993, the city issued an EMS request for proposals that included a performance-based system using one-person medical first responder units in conjunction with 2-person ambulances. And this system allowed EMS personnel to respond to medical calls for service as quickly as possible to deliver life-saving and life-sustaining aid. The city awarded a 2-year contract to ParaMed. The provider has changed several times in the 10 years after that, but the model has remained the same. Fast forward again to 2003, and the City Council awarded a contract to our current provider, Alliance Mobile Health. Alliance provides 2 services, the paramedic first responder service and the ambulance transportation service. Now, not all medical calls for service result in a patient being transported. In many cases, the patient is treated and doesn't need hospital care. In other cases, ambulance service is provided for transportation to a hospital or other facility. Now, the city pays an hourly rate for the paramedic first responder units, but does not pay any fee for ambulance service. Instead, Alliance bills patients for those services, and those costs are often covered by Medicare or private insurance. Now, this model has worked well for 20 years. However, the EMS industry is facing new challenges that may make this system unsustainable, and the city needs to evaluate other models. There are many systems used to deliver emergency medical services around the country, but Troy's model is somewhat unique in our area because the many of our neighboring communities use full-time firefighters as first response and ambulance transport services. But here in Troy, we have our unique combination fire department of full-time staff and volunteer members. So that model might not fit. Given the city's unique situation, city staff believes we need technical assistance to help evaluate the community's needs and identify options on how to meet those needs. These services are highly specialized, and there doesn't seem to be a competitive market. The fire chief and I looked around and were able to identify 2 service providers. And so we believe the public interest would be best served by obtaining proposals through an informal request for proposals process. And we've done that, and we have 2 proposals for your consideration tonight. And with that, I'll be happy to try to answer any questions. And Chief Hollinger is here with me too to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Bob. And I should note that I-5 had a late submittal yellow sheet that changed, looked like the financial account. So just as a public announcement there. Any questions for this Deputy City Manager? Mayor Pro Tem Chairman LaQuinca.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe with the recommended Fitch and Associates, there's 4 on-site visits that they are offering. What would transpire during those on-site visits?
There's more details in their proposal. Chief, if you want to go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, I can talk a little more to that. So with them, they would have an initial on-site visit with city administration to determine the scope of the work we're looking for, as well as begin the data collection process. Also, the other additional visits is they do offer different levels of community engagement if we would like as well. So, and that could be through various means.
And Chief, is that part of the price then?
Yes.
Or
Yes,
we'd have to pay additional if we wanted to?
With Fitch and Associates, it's included. All those are included, as well as the final presentation to council that we will work with them on. One of the other companies that was submitted, those were all additional cost on top of their proposal.
Okay, and I presume if they're offering that public engagement, they have experience doing it then?
Correct. Yeah, they have given us many, many references and pieces of work that they've done.
Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor. Assuming this passes tonight, what would be the proposed timeline for this process?
From the time of them receiving the PO and then us meeting with them, it's about a 7-month process for the final report.
Additional questions? I have a quick question. It's not for you, Chief. This resolution asks us to direct the city attorney to prepare or review a professional services agreement for EMS technical assistance with this company. Would there need to be additional approval by council once the contract is determined?
Yes, you would. That would be presented to you for your approval.
So this is real, okay. So this is just us approving to waive the bid, yeah, Mark?
Technically, you're not obligating any funds this evening. That would happen when the contract is reviewed and submitted to you.
We're essentially giving direction
Yeah.
to move forward without the bid. Okay. Any other questions? I'll move I-5, Emergency Medical Services, EMS Technical Assistance Services, as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga, that we approve I-5, Emergency Medical Services, EMS Technical Assistance Services, as printed in the agenda packet. Discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. That concludes regular business this evening. We move on to the consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull an item from
Mayor?
the...
I-6.
I'm sorry. That's funny. Sorry, I rolled right through it. I-6, I apologize. We do have more regular business. I-6 is City Manager Amended Employment Agreement, and that'll be introduced by our City Manager, Mark Miller.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I'm sorry to inform you that we had scheduled Stacy Belisle from McGraw-Morris to be here, our Labor Council, but she is under the weather, unable to make it this evening, which makes this a little more difficult. Jeanette Menig, HR Director, is here to answer any questions related to benefits. But I just would like to tell, I was gonna say tell a little story, but it's the background of what happened is about 5 years ago, late 2018, 2019, the City Council appointed myself as City Manager and directed me to work with Tom McGraw from McGraw-Morris to develop an employment agreement. And as part of that employment agreement, there was a 5-year period termination. And at the end of that, I negotiated 100% health care in retirement. And that shaved off approximately 1.5 to 2 years of what normally an employee would need to work for the city. That's 25 years. So I've been with the city 23 years as of August 23rd, I think that's the exact date, of this year. And then the city worked with James Vitrano from GovHR USA, and one of the recommendations from James was that we eliminate the termination dates of both the city attorney and city manager's agreements. That did occur, but I think that there was unintended consequence to muddy the waters a little bit, and then that the thing that I had negotiated became less clear. And I just feel that should be clarified, because I personally made all of my decisions is that I would work a 5-year term help stabilize the community after a rough background that we had. And but I also recognize that without Ms. Belial here this evening, that makes it a little more difficult, and that the attorney representation isn't there. But however, we're here to answer any questions, more specifically if there are questions about what the benefits are of the city. Jeanette Mena can help answer that question.
Thanks, Mark. Any questions on I-6? Councilmember Hamilton.
I don't have a question, but I'll just say, as I mentioned at the last meeting, this is just what we previously negotiated and it's clarifying it. Now it's been vetted through the city attorney and other attorneys, so I'm comfortable with it.
I don't know that it's been vetted. The city attorney, because that's not her role, but it's been vetted through outside counsel, is my understanding.
That's what I meant.
So,
Sorry.
yeah. All right. I guess if there's no other questions, I'll move I-6, City Manager Amended Employment Agreement, as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve I-6, City Manager Amended Employment Agreement, as printed in the agenda packet. Discussion? I'll just pick up where Councilmember Hamilton left off here. It does seem, well, I know it to be that this is just a clarification of some terms that did get muddied in 2020. I had asked some questions prior to this meeting and understand, obviously, there's no material changes to this contract. It was really about cleanup. It's consistent with existing benefits, as I understand, from Jeanette. So I'm, of course, happy to support it to make things clean and clear for our city manager. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes regular business. Now we can move on to the consent agenda. Anyone like to pull an item from the consent agenda for further discussion? Councilmember Abraham.
Thank you. I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham, supported by Councilmember Hoderick, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Motion carries. If you're here for an item on the consent agenda this evening, they all have been approved. Next up is memorandums and future council agenda items. K2 is a memorandum, which is an item submitted to City Council that may require consideration at some future point in time. A is the 2024 City Council meeting schedule. There's a proposed meeting date schedule in that memo. I don't know when we'll likely vote on it.
Organizational
The
meeting.
organizational meeting. So I would suggest that if you're an existing member of council, you should weigh in on if there's any major concerns with any of these dates so that they can be properly addressed prior to the organizational meeting on November 13th. And certainly, even if it comes before us, then we always have the opportunity to amend as necessary with proper notice for extenuating circumstances. Next up is public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. We have a handful of people signed up this evening. Again, I'll give the same rules. 3 minutes per our city council rules of procedure. When the light turns yellow, you have 1 minute left, and when it turns red, your time is up. First up is Marcia Bossenberger.
Good evening. It's been a while. Marcia Bossenberger, 369 Ottawa. I'm here to address about 4 different issues, but they all kind of come together as one. I have concerns about the upcoming PUD development, which for some people who don't know in the audience is a planned unit development. Two closest PUDs near Square Lake in Livernois are the Woodside Bible Church condos, and the wetlands is one PUD. And then the other PUD is South Boulevard and Rochester Road, which is the Caswell Town Center, which some people know it as the Starbucks or Oberweis, Jimmy John's, all that good stuff, and the condos that are behind it. Both of these PUD locations have impacted traffic and traffic accidents tremendously in that area. Seeing how the PUDs have impacted Rochester Road and South Boulevard, our small Troy Corners, which is 2 lanes, east-west, north-south, does not fit the potential impact a PUD development can have in that area. Please keep it an R1B low residential zone. A PUD is not what residents stated that was collected on the walk and talks. The revision to the Troy Master Plan that is upcoming also stated low-intensity uses working in conjunction with one another to form a central neighborhood village. I don't think a PUD is a village. It's a large development. Also, this is an election year, and I invite all that are running to please knock on my door to see our concerns of tearing down 400 Ottawa and making it into a road. Please knock on my door and walk with me to see the impact that it will have on Ottawa Drive. The townhouses next to John's Market were approved without ever having the correct road entrance. Please pass developments that have all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed. I also have concerns that a builder can clear-cut land before ever being approved to develop land, taking away trees and plants that benefit our environment. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Marcia. Good to see you. Next up is Mark Gunn.
Hi, good evening. I'm here with Dorothy. I happened to meet her recently, and she's been a long-term resident.
Yes.
There's a few problems going on in her residency, and I'm going to let her share a little bit, and then I'm going to suggest a solution. So.
Okay. Yes, I've been a resident of Troy, homeowner since 1976. Our current home is behind the building of the Nature Center. Now, at the time that the building was put up in 2004, we finally had an agreement with John Zerlag because, and it was a handshake agreement. Because the building was put too close to the residential boundary, they did not go to the planning department, so they put the building too close. The parking lots are also too close to the residential boundary. I know things have perhaps changed through the years. There was a foot measurement at that time, but now I believe that just an eyeball, the height of the building should be the minimum amount of space from the fence. So that's wrong, and that's acknowledged. But I asked that they not put storage things back there, no compost, no beehives, no any of the clutter. They have 100 acres at the Nature Center. Turns out that in recent years it's just been getting worse and worse until now we finally have beehives. Last year they put in a couple of piles, fence high, of wood chips. They've recently been infested with insects, and so there were a couple of recent dealings with that. So that's why I asked Mark to help me, because I've talked to 4 different men wearing suits in this building right now. So this is according to your city council rules. I've dealt with all the departments that should have been able to handle this, and nobody has handled it. And I'm back again because this is just out of order. You lost my property value at the time that you placed the building too close to my house. The assessor saw that immediately. In fact, he partially got up out of his chair and said, "What?" As did the planner when he found out that the building had been placed without going through the planning department. So now they're adding insult to injury by making this a junk heap. And I can describe the junk, but I got a yellow light, so.
Well, I guess real quick, I'd just say that, if there's anything that city council can suggest to help this woman, but there's also a light issue, and it's in the ordinance to the photo. Oh, I had the solution, but.
Okay.
All right.
you want to ask any questions about the lighting.
Unfortunately, it's not an opportunity for a back and forth right now, but I will, I have an opportunity to make a few comments afterwards, and I will speak to it for sure.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, next up is Dave Lambert.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and members of city staff. I had no idea that those two issues would come up before I had to speak, but I won't talk about those right now. First, I'm sure her colleagues will say something nice about her, but as a citizen, I'd like to thank Councilwoman Abraham for her service as a member of City Council for the past 8 years. I don't know if the average person in the city knows or not, but you all know the amount of time that it takes for the big, hefty salary of less than $200 a month. So thank you, Edna. Secondly, I wanted to bring to your attention something that happened almost exactly a year ago, and it has to do with sustainability and also the growing senior population here in Troy. And that is at the October 24th meeting a year ago, there was a presentation on the upcoming transit proposal by Neil Greenberg, who was apparently the Oakland County Transit Advisor at that time. I believe one of you asked, and it might have been Councilman Hamilton, about if the millage was passed, how that would impact the Smart Flex program here in Troy, and whether it would be expanded if the millage was passed. Fortunately, the voters did approve the millage, but we should now ask how this affects Troy nearly 1 year later. Smart Flex is supposed to be an easy way to get around, according to their website, Dearborn, Troy, Clawson, Auburn Hills, Pontiac, Hall Road, and the Farmington Hills areas. Yet right now it only covers that area of Wiles Road on the south side of Wiles Road. The millage passage has not changed that situation at all. As the largest city in Oakland County, I hope we can start asking SMART when we will see a Smart Flex service that will cover the entire city of Troy. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Dave. Next up is Dale Murish.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have some remarks here on, I want to explain a couple of phrases used in my newspaper ads for the Troy City Council member. Please correct any mistakes I've made in the council response time. Vote for individuals, not a slate. The Safe Troy slate is misnamed. The Troy City Council has not done as much as it could to recruit more police officers who help keep our city safe. The council could have voted for increased salaries and signing bonuses to attract more police officers. 2 of the 3 slate candidates are incumbents. Are they pledging to help sign more than 10 new police officers? There's open recs for them. Is the non-incumbent hoping to ride their coattails to victory? Besides me, the independent campaigners for council are Mark Gunn, Ed Ross, and Ed Kempen. Mark Gunn is the hardest working person in the race and will represent the people of Troy well. Ed Ross is a volunteer firefighter familiar with the past and new incentive plans. His educational background and work experience make him well qualified to serve on the council. Ed Kempen has some fresh ideas and has also run before. The council is close to single-party rule. All 6 council members are Democrats. Mayor Ethan Baker is a lone Republican. Being a council member is a nonpartisan position, but everyone brings their political philosophy to the job. Recently, Ann Erickson Galt sponsored a resolution supporting Black Lives Matter, which is arguably not city business and not a group the majority of people in Troy would want to support. Next phrase that I used was necessities before amenities. This also needs some explanation. Attracting and retaining the volunteer firefighters is a necessity, not an amenity. If enough of our volunteers quit, we will need full-time paid firefighters at a much higher cost to the taxpayers. The new outdoor skating rink was voted on unanimously by the current council. It's a nice amenity, but pretty expensive. I understand the tired argument that was used for the White Elephant Transit Center. If our community doesn't approve this, some other city will get the money. Congress has already allocated the money, but it is all our American tax money. the skating rink should at least have chillers like a conventional ice rink. Then it could be used in shoulder seasons or midwinter thaws. It's time to restore some balance to the council. Please vote for Murish, Gunn, and Ross. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mursh. That concludes those that have signed up for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Now there is an opportunity for council and administration to respond and reply. I promised you, Dorothy, that I would reply a couple of questions. And I know there is a light pollution issue you've brought before and I know you have met with me, and I know you've met with I think you met with Kurt. I don't know if you talked to Mark. I mean, I think you've talked to a few of us. Maybe you haven't met with Kurt. I will defer to city administration on, again, maybe refreshing all of council's, obviously not right at this moment, but the history on this, because it has been a while since you and I have met, for sure. But I do remember at the time there was there was a report or something given, maybe it was just to me personally, but I'll check back. But if, Mark, perhaps you can look into some of these issues relating to the placement of the building close to the property line with the residential there. And I believe at the time the Owl House was new, and that also brought some concern. And it is close to the property line. There's no question. And just to restate, the conversation we had, I think it was before COVID. I think it was right after I got elected. Or we were wearing masks. Thank you. So it was not before COVID. But I think the question was around whether or not the city had to follow its same setback requirements that a private landowner would have to. That was my memory of some of it and the issues related to that. And at least at the very least for the Nature Society not to put things back there up close to the property line that caused a look of blight or potential other issues as it relates to your property. We can't have a back and forth conversation right now. I will ask city management to have a further conversation at some point or delegate somebody just to clarify it's a legitimate resident concern that has come up before. Go ahead, Mark.
Yes, we'll follow up with a report.
Figured you were. Thank you. And if there are additional comments you need to bring, you could email citymanager@troymi.gov, or I think that would help, and city council email at troymi.gov would come to all of us. Okay?
No, I didn't get the instructions.
City council email at troymi.gov. If you email that, it'll go to all of us on council as well as city administration. That's probably the best thing to do. Thank you. Dave, I met with Smart, not this Dave, that Dave. I did meet with Smart fairly recently, and I've asked every single time I've run into them, whether at a chamber event, whether at the State of the City, whether anywhere, what can we do to expand Smart Flex service, because it's limited to a small, essentially corridor in our city. And I said, there's good people in our city, like our planning commissioning chair, who would probably use it if it would take him to and from his house, as well as a member of council who only has one car in the household and who would use it occasionally as well. So he's promised that he would get back to me with more information. I know that they did just release their expanded service based on the OTA, or the transit that was passed, and Smart Flex being increased in Troy was not included in that. So now's a perfect opportunity for me to go back to him and ask again where that stands. And of course, anyone else on council, if there's an opportunity there, that would be great. Additional reply? Councilmember Hodrick. Talk about Marcia, sorry.
Marcia Bossenberger, thank you for coming to talk to us. As you know, that has not come before us as something that we're making a decision on as of yet. And that will go through the Planning Commission. And I just wanted to make sure we clarify that's where the next place that will come through. So I hear your input, and I'm sure you're going to be sharing the same input with the planning commissioners. If you weren't planning to, please be sure that you understand that's the process. I believe you do. I wanted to say it for others that might be listening. and I appreciate you bringing your thoughts to us. I have come visited by your house and on Ottawa, and appreciate the resident input from that area. So thank you for coming before us tonight. The Nature Center item, I feel, was checked off. Mr. Lambert, thank you. I'm right with you on that topic. And Mr. Murish, I can't address every point of what you were addressing there. A personal point, I am not affiliated with any political party. I'm neither Republican nor Democrat. I'm pretty happy independent. Our city charter requires us to be nonpartisan and to function accordingly to represent all of our fellow residents, and to not to avoid representing special interests. You may remember, you and I go a little ways back, when I first became involved, it was because I was seeing partisanship at this council table that I became an activist, frankly. As I saw what that did to decisions in the community related to our library, and a millage cap that was brought in by charter, charter change that capped our millage and put our AAA bond rating at risk. I became a fierce advocate for really working on the facts and not, that from this table, decisions that were made should have nothing to do with the political platform of either party. Our public servants, our city employees, serve this community apolitically. The work they do is apolitical. And that is the way I firmly believe our city council should serve as well. And I find, and as I work with my colleagues, they're striving. It's even like in the courts, judges might come with an ideological bent, but they come to make their decisions according to the facts, the Constitution, the law. We really work hard to try to do that as a council. I personally have really worked hard to stay in that nonpartisan place, to the extent I have partisan friends from both parties who will give me a side eye now and again and wonder where I'm coming from on my decision making. So I just wanted to clarify that publicly, and I'm passionate. And in these divided times, find it rather liberating that thanks to our city charter, I'm required to be as nonpartisan as possible. And it's a lovely place to be in the gray area. I find many of my fellow residents really expect it, because most of the decisions we're making here really transcend partisanship. In terms of our public safety record as a council, my entire time I've served, and I'm in my third term, I can attest to the fact that I have seen all 7 members of the councils prioritize public safety, our police department, our fire department, our EMS services, passionately. We have looked to our command for guidance, particularly in these tough times of hiring in all 3 entities, fire, police, and EMS, and have increased budgets accordingly. It's a campaign season, and so conversations come up, and people rightfully talk about public safety. It's the #1 thing that appears on citizen surveys consistently, and it's the #1 thing that we are supposed to deliver. Everything from the recent union contract to a time period when to hire more, we needed to put more money forward. We did that, and in fact, other communities around us ended up having to follow. Attracting talented police officers is a huge priority for us. We could direct our police chief and the hiring body here to fill those tomorrow. But would we have them filled with the best and brightest that we want in our police department, that our police officers want as their fellow officers? We go through a recruitment process that is very vigorous, a very vigorous background check, and we want our police department in this city to have the best officers that we can. That has also been a very consistent refrain for my entire time I've been on council. One time it was perceived as more of a Republican council, other times it's perceived as more liberal. Consistently, we have stood by our hiring practices and done what our police command has asked us to do, and we sense check always, what can we be doing to help? I just want to assure the public that that's the case. I'm not running for anything. I just want to state the facts in terms of our public safety and our record of standing by. Back when I first was involved and that millage cap came in, and then we hit a huge downturn and our budget took a hit, our public safety, our entire city hall staff took some huge cuts. We are a lean operation. That said, our police department pivoted and redid its shifts, how they managed that whole process that has served us well. We need to reevaluate that at some point. If our police chief comes to us and says, we're seeing warning signals of this, that, and the other, it is my belief that whoever is sitting at this table, in particular, I know my colleagues are ready to listen, understand, and respond. We are those first responders in that regard. It was an extreme right tax-cutting era that left us collectively holding a bag now. People who weren't even involved, they weren't in the command positions they're in now, people who weren't even paying attention to city business. It is a hefty bag, and we do need to do it collectively. That you are spot on, sir. I'm right with you. I completely agree with you. And any doubt that we haven't already been doing our best is frankly, personally offensive to me, because I put a lot on the line personally. And I just wanted to say that for the record. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do so. You did so politely. You asked for correction if it needed to be made, and I appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoderick. Additional response? All right. There are no council referrals this evening. We move on to reports. Are there any comments specifically to the reports? Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Crankle.
Thank you. Just a quick question. So O2B, the master plan community engagement update, thank you. I think we had asked about where's that at, how is it going? Just for clarification, so a lot of great stuff that is happening, is planned. Is that content? Who's creating that content? Is that Carlisle Wortman is creating the content and we're pushing it out, or is that the city? We're doing all that content creation?
Matt, go ahead if you guys have a specific answer.
This city has created that content. We've spent a lot of time starting when we were modifying the master plan and bringing it ahead of you. We were already thinking, how do we want to get this out in the community? What are some creative ways we haven't engaged the community in the past, which might be useful this time? So this was done in-house with the city staff, working collaboratively to try and find different avenues to reach out to our community members.
I just want to thank you all. I know you're down Tori, who was playing that communications communicate. That's why I just was curious who was doing it. So thank you all for doing all the extra work.
Thank you. Any additional comments on the reports? All right, next up are council comments. I'm going to bifurcate the council comments this evening. So first stage of council comments, anything not related to Edna Abraham's last name. Not Edna related. Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Kranga.
I have a little one. So I just wanted to call out my son, William, who's in the audience, who, as William knows, and as was mentioned tonight, we're paid, under $200 a month for what we do. And if anything, William has seen the hours and the phone calls and the decision-making that we do. And so I appreciate him for a lot of reasons he's here, but for one of them, he did want to be here and to see what his mommy spent her time doing on these Monday nights. So I thank you. And he might be a little shy to share, but he does have an idea to share with Troy around having, kind of speaking of the ice skating rink and other winter sports, around maybe a ski hill someday in the future. That is his idea. He's actually mapped it out. So maybe someday he'll come back and he'll share his vision with us on council. So thank you, William, for being here.
Thank you. Additional non-Edna comments from council? Nature Uncorked, right? Councilmember Brooks?
November 10th.
Frightful 5K, Sunday the 22nd. Prices just went up today, but you can still register in advance. rec.troymi.gov/frightful5K. It's a great community event. Also, it's election day coming up. And absentee ballots are out. There'll be 9 days of early voting. I think postcards have gone out or are going out.
They're out already, yeah.
Postcards are already out related to early voting. There'll be further information. Where's the best place to look for information on that?
Everything's on the website, city website, troymi.gov/elections, and all the links to all the specific pages, including the early voting page, are also linked from that page.
And of course, election day voting as usual at your local precinct on Tuesday, November 7th. All right.
Can I just follow up on the election things? Yeah, so the first day of early voting is Sunday, the 27th?
Saturday, October 28th.
28th, sorry. Saturday, October 28th. And you can come in person to the community center. If you haven't, in the future, if you have an absentee ballot, you'll be able to put it in the machine there, but not on this election.
Correct.
So if you already have an absentee ballot, you can just submit it through the drop boxes. But if you don't request an absentee ballot, you can come in person, vote early, put it in the machine yourself, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
Thank you. Okay. Well, this evening is Councilmember Edna Abraham's last scheduled city council meeting. She still serves until November 13th. And there's a tradition in council chambers of sharing some comments about a retiring council member. And so we're going to take that opportunity now, and then I'll give the floor to Councilmember Abraham to wrap things up from the council comment section. So I'm going to start with Councilmember Erickson Galt, if that's all right.
Thank you, Mayor. Many, many years ago, when our city was going through some issues, I was at a local club gathering, and two wonderful women came to speak to us and to explain to us how important it was to step up and fight for our library. I thought, wow, these are two amazing women who came to speak to us. And I didn't really know Edna then, but then she ran for council, and I got to know her a little bit better. And I watched as a community activist turned into a civic leader, and continued to tear it up on council, but in a way that upheld the dignity of the office. And that's one of the things I've always appreciated about Edna. You have a unique way of speaking truth to power without barely breaking a sweat. You have, just the turn of the phrase. It's just amazing. And I will miss many things about you, but mostly about the way you speak so directly and thoughtfully to the issues that matter here. And you remind us of what's really important. You get to the heart of it. I often wait to say anything on council to see if Edna speaks first, because often her words would just parrot what was in my head, except they would say it so much better than I would. So clearly, so cogently. I just have always loved that about Edna. But most of all, I'm going to miss your kind and generous heart. And I thank you. I thank you for your service. I thank you for everything you've done for Troy.
Thank you, Councilmember Erickson Galt.
I didn't keep it together either.
I've already lost the bet, but you want to go, David?
Sure. I've served on this council for 6 years, the entire time with Councilmember Abraham. She served for 8 long years, and it's hard to believe it's been 8 years. That's why when I joined it, you were on 2 years. Yet, the way you presented yourself at council, when only having been on 2 years, to me, it felt like you had been on council for 20 years. You felt like one of those council members, classic council members in Troy, like Tony Pilata and Mayor Stein, who served for many, many years. Tony Pilata was a statesman, Mayor Stein was a stateswoman, and you carried on that same tradition of just decency, of caring about what's important. To me, in this world full of distractions and everything, one thing I always think about is to focus your life on things that matter, things that affect people's lives. The things the city does affects people's lives. And when it runs well, it makes substantial impact on people's lives. And your advocacy, your service on council, you were just this little tiny woman who ran with your pink signs everywhere in 2015. And in 2015, I remember voting. I think I might have only voted for you. I don't remember. It was a while ago, but it inspired a little spark in me that thought, Edna was an engineer. She's lived in Troy her whole life. I'm an engineer. I've lived in Troy almost my whole life. Maybe I could do this. And I ran and I joined you on council too. And we've been through a lot together on this council. And every meeting you've made me a better council member. You've made me, every time something happens and maybe I don't agree with it and a fire gets inside of me, and I just kind of what Ann said, like, I think what would Edna do in this situation? What would she think? You remind me a lot about, my dad was friends with Tony Pilata growing up, and you remind me a lot of him in that how you make people feel is your greatest strength. So we will miss you. Thank you for your service.
Thanks, David. Rebecca, can you go?
Edna, I would not be here today if it was not for you. So I have a story. So, Kresge Foundation, place I love, just left after 9 years. Kresge, we had a grand opening. We just expanded our beautiful LEED Platinum building, and all of council was invited to a beautiful open house, and all of the community leaders. You were with Aura from the chamber, and I remember you were roaming around. You know, there were hors d'oeuvres and drinks, and I just happened to run into you, and I explained I'm a new resident. I had just purchased a home in Troy, and I shared. And then when I saw you were in city council, and I said my father, he was on city council for years and years in my hometown. He was deputy mayor. He's still on planning commission, and I said I'd love to be involved in the community. And so you said, here's my card, email me. And we actually do have boards and committees, and there are opportunities to actually get involved in the city. And for a lot of people don't realize that. They don't realize that there's all these boards and committees. And for a newcomer to feel like, I want to be involved, I want to serve. And I didn't know how to go about it. Like, you don't just hop on a website and find it. So you gave me your card, I reached out, and you responded. If you had not responded, I mean, who knows? And you shared the link to the boards and committees. You shared, there's an online application. I think I probably have written probably the most extensive application of any. As I read, no one actually does them, but actually I put so much time. I wrote essays about how much I wanted to be involved and the value add that I wanted to bring to the committees I applied for. And that's how it started. Through that interaction, I put my name forward, and you warned me, that it turned out, I would be up for a nomination, and you couldn't promise, if I would, but I remember that was my first council meeting I came to when I was up for a vote. And so I know what that's like when you're up for a vote for a committee, but that started then, and then I went on to serve on another committee as well. But that's what started public service. That's what started understanding how the city works, getting to know people like Mark and Kurt, and engaging with the city and understand, and just developing a passion. And as I engaged, especially when I was on Global Troy, it's a lot of our new residents. Like, that's how Troy has changed. We have such a diverse array of residents. And I think often I started coming to different meetings around different issues that were important to Global Troy. And you were always my first person, you and Ellen, that I'd reach out to, because I knew you guys and would share, like, this is a concern in the community, and, heads up, I think we're going to come and speak about it. And you were that person who just you're always kind of like, yes, we'll approach it from the city's perspective, but always encourage, come out, speak up. And so, again, I wouldn't be here today if you hadn't answered that email of mine and sent me to committees, and I started serving on committees and getting involved, and it led to this. So, Edna, thank you for responding to my email, and thank you for making so much possible in my own life.
Thanks, Rebecca. Can I go down to Teresa?
Oh my goodness, I should have brought tissues because I'm crying already. You are truly just an amazing person. I am just in awe of you, and I want you to know that. I really, truly am. You're just smart, and you are just so well-spoken, and I just think I just want to be like Edna when I grow up. I really do. And you were the first person that did endorse me when I ran for council the first time, and I just appreciated it so much. And I'll always appreciate it. And you came and spoke at my launch and everything, and I was just like, oh, Edna. And nobody ever says anything bad about you. Like, seriously, nobody. Like, everybody loves you. You're just wonderful. You have a heart of gold, and I want you to know that you are just, you really impact people's lives in a really, really, really wonderful way. And I have really enjoyed getting to know you, and sitting by you, next to you this past year has been a privilege, and I really look forward to just kind of continuing our friendship. Even though you won't be sitting next to me, we'll be able to still share dinner and drinks, yes, and coffee and everything. So I just want to tell you how much you are really, truly appreciated, not only for just serving during a very, very turbulent time and really standing up for what was right. And people don't know how hard it is sometimes to go against the grain, but you did it, and you have strength of character, a heart of gold, and you're truly a very, very special person.
Thank you, Teresa. Ellen?
I don't know if I can. I'm in denial. The community is going to lose a really wonderful representative. Edna has prioritized some big things in her life and knows that she can't mix this with those additional priorities, and I respect her decision, but I hate her decision. I first saw the name Edna Abraham when I worked for the city in the Community Affairs Department, editing the Troy Today, proofreading the library pages where there were book groups. And Edna was a facilitator of one of the book groups, and I would see her name there, and she always had a really cool book, and I had little kids, and I didn't have time to join her book group. But I kept thinking, I wonder who this person is, and it would be cool if I had time to join her book group. We go through the downturn. The first proposal to save the library failed, and Edna had been a very pivotal person in working on that. And a group came together to say, now what? What do we do going forward? And I get into a room. I'm now a non-employee. I no longer worked for the city. And I meet this little tiny piece of humanity, and this is Edna Abraham, and I had a face with a name. And her work on council has been tremendous, but prior to any of that, her work and support and trying to understand what the path forward could be, how people could come together from multiple parties and work together was amazing. There were some very tough, long nights of being a citizen activist sitting back there, making sure the police department was here and that the police chief was in the corner because there were really heated discussions. Councilman Lambert at the time knew that era, and I respect the dignity he brought to the table when he served as well. So we watched and learned. Fast forward, I ended out running for council first. It always should have been her, but she didn't have time and I did, so I ran. And then she joined 2 years later and truly was my North Star. Edna's depth of character, her integrity is amazing. And I commit that I will try to carry that on, and she has promised me I can still be a touchstone if I need her, because that's what she has been to me, an amazing touchstone. Edna earned a seat at the table, and she made sure she was always at the table. There was a critical vote along the way at a time when her father was in hospice care, and the dedication to the work and the decision-making on her part during that time, particularly near the end, when she was here at a council meeting with his blessing and with his words of encouragement to make sure she made the right decisions, has always stayed with me. There are a lot of high school students here tonight. Look for role models like this one in your life, in your friendships, in groups that you're in classes. This community has been very blessed by her. Clearly, all of us feel blessed. I have been personally blessed. And I'm really going to miss you sitting here. And I really want to thank you for all you've given to this community. She's someone who comes to hear on me, but I look up to her. And we should all be really grateful. I'm going to miss you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. It's hard to do this. Yeah, I'm. First of all, Bethany's here, so that tells you it must be important. It must be important if Bethany's come. Bethany's my wife, for those of you who don't know. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Edna, I can't. I've tried for the past month to sit down and write something to say tonight, and I've written some stuff and then said, "Oh, that's terrible. I can't." It doesn't serve Edna justice, and that's the most difficult thing. And I know that whatever I say tonight, I'll leave here tonight and think, "Oh, I didn't say this, and I wish I would have." And that's okay. I can accept that. And I was going through a couple things, and I've given 3 State of the City addresses, and I've talked about you, each of you, and 2 of them specifically. And I'm going to start with what I said, because I think it's really fascinating. So 2021, I said, Councilmember Edna Abraham, on my council sis, Edna and I were elected to Troy City Council on the same day in 2015. And while we weren't initially as close as we should have been, We went through a lot early in our council careers and formed a very strong bond. You know, when Edna speaks at a council meeting, you're going to want to pay attention. We were very fortunate to have her continued leadership in our city, and I'm so thankful to have Edna as a voice of reason. 2 years later, I said, Councilmember Edna Abraham is here, and I'm always thankful to have Edna's presence in any room. Edna has found a way to transcend politics in her role, winning support, accolades, and respect from members of all political parties, and representing all different perspectives seemingly without breaking a sweat. I think someone mentioned that earlier too. When Edna speaks, people listen, and I've been blessed to serve with my council sis for the past 7.5 years. That was early this year. I'll be very honest, Edna, for whatever reason, I was going through my iPhone over the past couple of weeks, searching Edna pictures, and I'm going through 8 years, and I was crying because it's hard to explain the bonds that we can form in these roles. And I think you've seen tonight, all of us are deeply, maybe disturbed is a little strong, but that's kind of how I feel about you leaving. There's such a history over these past 8 years, especially in the city. And Edna, I know that many meetings, many days, I couldn't have done without knowing that you were either in the room with me or we had the opportunity to talk about things beforehand or certainly after, if necessary. And it speaks to who you are. Ellen, has worked with you the longest in a sense, as an activist before. And she touched a little bit on this, and she talked about your dad in that meeting that you were here. And it says a lot about who you are and also about who your dad was, that he wanted you to come and your whole family. And that tells me the amount of service-minded blood you have coursing through your veins. And we don't talk about this a lot, but you're a caretaker and caregiver for your mom still today, on top of your very important job with the company and the work you do here. But before the meeting, Edna's mom and sisters and brother were here. They took some pictures. And to have your mom here in person and to be able to sit in your chair and experience something that means so much to her, and I know she could feel it and remember as well. And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. There's a million things I've thought about over these past month or so as I've thought about this night. And like Ellen said, I'm in denial about it too. I expect Edna to be back on November 13th. Still trying to find a way to do it. But Edna Abraham is a Troy lifer, meaning other than when she was in school, she's here. She was here in Troy, and she's a Troy lifer in every wonderful way. And I think that perspective has brought so much to the council table and out to the community. And I'm comforted in knowing that she'll continue to be a member of this community and will still weigh in where necessary and will give us the advice, whether we want to hear it or not, but we will because it's Edna. I know that. And I hope that you leave here tonight. You're still in office, by the way, till November 13th. So, but I hope that you leave here tonight feeling a little bit of the love and admiration certainly every one of us up here at this table have for you, but community members do as well. Bethany and I were talking earlier about who is Edna, and we agreed, and Bethany actually said it first, but you're a model of what a local government official should be. And I will continue to look up to little Edna, just like the rest of us will, and try to be as impactful and as well-reasoned as you have always been. It's phenomenal, Edna, and I'm so thankful for so many relationships I've made in this role, but the relationship I've been able to have with you, as my counsel says, is just extremely special. And I'm wearing a Disney tie for you tonight. And it's a subtle tie, but it's got Mickey Mouse on it, because Edna's a Disney fan, and I thought I'd wear that in your honor, and honestly, Edna, I'm in awe of you, and the work you've done is second to none, and really, it's my honor, all of our honor, to have served with you. And I can't think of a person more well-loved by her colleague members, the city staff, and the community than you. And please take that with you and know how much we love you and are thankful for your service. So God bless you, Edna. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I have to speak after that. I feel a little bit like Ted Lasso for those that have watched the show. It's not about me. It never was. And if I have made a favorable impression on this council or on staff or just in the community, take that forward. It doesn't have to be about me. It can be about all of us. And so I really thank you for all of those comments. I wore mascara tonight in the hopes that it would prevent me from tearing up, and I was doing pretty well until about 3 or 4 people in. I prepared remarks because I knew this would be a little bit difficult, which if you've ever watched me at council, I almost never prepare comments. Not that I haven't thought about what I'm going to say, but I never write it down. And the other thing is I'm probably going to talk for a long time tonight, which almost never happens. I'll probably talk longer than you, Ethan. But hey, it's my last night. This will go a long way. My civic engagement began 13 years ago with one simple mission, and it was to save the Troy Public Library. I had no idea that it would eventually lead me to a seat on council. As an immigrant's daughter who once struggled with public speaking and honestly is not really fond of the limelight, I never dreamt that this was ever going to be something I would do, that I would run and win a seat on council, not once but twice. After 280 regular meetings and special study sessions, it's really hard to believe that tonight is the last night or the last official meeting. I know I'm still serving till the 13th. It's until 7:30 p.m. 8 years ago, I could not have fathomed what challenges the city would face. I'm very proud to leave the city that is more ethical, more financially secure, more safe, and more committed than ever to finding a path to improving quality of life services in a responsible way. But I also couldn't have fathomed how profoundly being on council would change me. I understand now what the Greek philosopher Heraclitus meant when he wrote, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he is not the same man." I'm not that same person that I was 8 years ago, but this council certainly is not the same river that it was either. Being on council doesn't just mean showing up for meetings twice a month. To do it well, it is a 10 to 20-hour commitment a week in preparing for meetings, attending community events, engaging with residents, and partnering with other leaders at the local, regional, state, and federal levels to make sure our Troy residents' concerns are met and resolved satisfactorily. And while not necessary, I feel it would be remiss if I didn't explain why I chose not to run for a third term. What most don't know is that within 1 month of my being elected, I became a caregiver to a parent diagnosed with a slowly debilitating condition. Within the next year, the caregiving role was expanded to a second parent with a disease whose progression was quick and fatal. While I am fortunate to have one parent with me, the odds are that the long goodbye that started 8 years ago will end within a third term. Caregiving takes a toll on a person, physically, mentally, and emotionally. I recognize I would not be able to serve our residents fully and to the level that I would want to serve as a council member while balancing the ever-increasing caregiving needs as well as that full-time job. The only responsible choice for the city, for my family, and for myself was to step away. It has been the privilege of a lifetime to serve as a Troy City Council member, particularly as someone who came here in 1976, 3 months old, went to school here, left to Ann Arbor for 4 years, and came back and never left. I saw no reason to leave. So to represent my fellow residents, it truly has been an honor. I thank the residents for putting your trust in me and allowing me to represent you these past 8 years. When a person serves on council, their family and those closest to them do too. Most people don't realize this. They pick up the burden from your not being present. They take on the stress you bring home but can't always share. They are the ones that worry that in the days of heightened tensions, if you will come to physical harm as other elected officials have. And all the while, they're put in the unenviable position of stifling their natural inclination to defend you for fear that their words might make things worse. I could not have served these past 8 years if I had not had such a strong support system. I want to thank those closest to me, and I'm sure even though this list is long, I'm going to forget people, and so I ask for my apologies in advance. But the first people I want to thank are my mother and late father for their unwavering love and being models of hard work, tenacity, and ethical behavior. I want to thank my sister Venus, brother Lynn, and most particularly my sister Jarrell for picking up extra caregiving duties so I could be fully present as a council member. I'd like to thank my boyfriend John, who has been my biggest supporter and worked tirelessly to get me elected twice, even when he could see the toll it was taking on me. He knew it was something I wanted to do because it was the right thing for the community, and he was always there with a shoulder to lean on. I want to thank my trusted core group of friends, Matt, John, Sue, Brian, Ellen, and Mike, whose collective ability to make me roar with laughter is equal to their ability to provide wise counsel and insight. I'd like to thank my friend Mary Lynn, who I met 20 years ago at a TPL-sponsored book club, for her sympathetic ear and all the baked goods that she has provided over 20 years. Mary Lynn, perhaps I will rejoin the book club after an 8-year hiatus. To all of the friends and community members who I met along the way, too numerous to name, while advocating for the Troy Library millage and the Janice Daniels recall. You all put me on a path for community engagement that continues to this day. And last but certainly not least, my friend and Mayor Emeritus Gene Stein for being a model of public service and for being the first person who saw my potential to be on council. I can still remember the conversation in a Panera in 2012 asking me to run for mayor. I declined at the time. I thought she was crazy for even thinking it was possible. But my time on council wouldn't be complete without acknowledging my council members here. It has been truly a pleasure working with this body. Even when we did not agree, which wasn't all that often, no one was ever disagreeable, and I consider all of you friends. Now it's going to be the hard part. Teresa, From the moment we met, I could not help but be impressed by you. I remember thinking, gosh, when I grow up, I want to be like Teresa.
Funny.
Now I find out you had the same thought about me. I also remember thinking, you have such a full and rewarding life. You're a doctor, you're a wife, you're a mom. Why on earth would you want to do city council? What could that possibly be of interest to you? But in retrospect, the answer was really clear. It is in your nature to make things better, whether it's with the patient or with the city as a whole. I truly hope that you will be sitting in that seat for another 4 years, because the community has benefit and will benefit from you being here. David. You always get teased about being a statistics nerd. I know I've done it to you on more than one occasion. I'm doing it right now. But the great thing about you is you take all of this data, and as a human computer, you piece it together in a way that puts insight to it. It's not just a load of data. You get the insights, you put a narrative to it, and you bring the passion for your community and inject it into the conversation at the table. And as a fellow Troy lifer, I'm so pleased that you will continue to be that old school voice of the residents who have been there for so long. Thank you for being such a good sport of all good-natured ribbing, and for being so dedicated to make Troy a better place for future generations, so your daughter can benefit the same way that you did by living here. I know Troy's in good hands with you. Rebecca, I remember exactly the same event at Kresge so long ago. It had to have been 2016. And it was funny. After we made that first connection, our paths kept crossing. And not just because you had the Pulitzer Prize of board applications. You are truly one of the most impressive people I know, with one of the most impressive resumes I have ever seen. You got multiple degrees from prestigious universities all over the world. A former Marshall Scholar. You know people all over the globe. But the most impressive thing about you aren't those accomplishments. It's your heart. You put your heart into all of your decision-making and all of your engagements with residents. You come to the table thinking about residents first and foremost, and I thank you for bringing your time and talents to the table. And I'm not sure what I admire more about you. Your unabashed dedication to transparency and ethics, or your uncanny ability to get to the heart of the issue in what seems like seconds, or your razor-sharp wit. You come sit next to me at any dinner party. You have been a calm voice of reason at the council table. And I was chuckling to myself when you said, I wait until you speak before I do, just to see if it aligns. And I do the same thing with you. There are times where I've intentionally waited because I'm like, I want to hear what Ann has to say. You have been a great sense check over these 4 years, and I take great heart in knowing and hoping that you will be here for another 4 years, or another 8, that would be fine too. Because I know you are representing the citizens' best interests at heart. Ethan, I call you my council brother because of our shared experience of being newbies on council. You'd be the one that I text back in the early days of 2016 when we're both going to an event. What are you wearing? What time are you showing up? All the silly questions that you don't want to ask one of the seasoned vets. And like true siblings, we hit a rough patch where I can honestly say I did not like you very much. But also, like siblings, we found a way past the mistrust and adverse circumstances. And now I can state unconditionally that I'm proud to call you a friend and that our friendship has been one of the unexpected delights of serving on council. It was not on my bingo card that we would ever be buddies. Ellen, in my early days on council, I remember being in such awe of you. I remember thinking, wow, I hope one day to be as thoughtful, as discerning, as articulate, and as knowledgeable on how the city operates as you are. 8 years later, I still feel the same way. I am so grateful that the citizens of Troy have you to watch over them for 2 more years. I am even more grateful that you have been my ride or die these past 12 years on any number of occasions and circumstances. I'm already running quite long. I can't say enough about our city staff. There are so many department heads that have now since retired, have moved on, in addition to the ones that we have now, that residents do not realize how dedicated they are, how committed they are to serving the community. In many cases, they are residents just like you, and they want this city to shine because they live here too, but more importantly, because it's important to them. And we could not have such quality staff, department heads, from the bottom all the way to the top without Lori and Mark, your leadership. There have been a lot of difficult times over the past 8 years. Huge ethical challenges. We get through that. We enter COVID and the uncertainty of that. And between the two of you who are, again, my only 2 employees, you weathered it all. And maybe residents never saw how difficult it was, but you guys made it look, well, maybe not easy, but you kept things calm and you brought the temperature down so we could address the issues at hand. That's an extremely difficult thing to do, especially when you're dealing with a board of 7 people who all have different ideas. I can't thank you enough for bringing that leadership over the past 8 years. My last comments are actually to those who are hoping to fill this seat. A little advice or insight, take it for what you will. The first piece of advice or insight I'd give you is that the skills that have served you well as a community activist or candidate are not the same skills that are needed as a council member. I cannot stress this enough. I have been a community activist and I've been a candidate twice. It's not the same as governing. To paraphrase George Washington from the musical Hamilton, winning was easy, governing is harder. Troy residents are not interested in grandstanding or posturing. They want good governance that only comes through dedication, hard work, collaboration, and the motivation to achieve the best results for the entire community, not just for the people that voted for you. My second piece of advice is don't bring knowledge to the council table, bring wisdom. Knowledge is just facts and figures. Anyone can be knowledgeable. But wisdom is the application of knowledge with context to the situation, with pragmatism, with compassion, and not the least of all, humility. If you bring wisdom to the council table, good decisions will be the natural outcome, and there will be a whole heck of a lot less discord. The third piece of advice, you can't please everyone. Don't try. Sometimes you have to disagree with those who are closest to you, and you need to be prepared for that. If you do not have the fortitude to take an unpopular position, you're not ready for the role. It can and will happen, and our residents expect you to take a hard position from time to time because it's the right thing to do, not because your supporters want you to. The last piece of advice is this. There's 7 people running for 3 seats. The reality is that on November 8th, there are going to be 4 individuals that will be disappointed that they will not be able to serve on council. But if your intention is truly to serve the community, take heart. There are so many ways you can do that. Become a member and volunteer with the Friends of the Troy Public Library, the Troy Historic Village, Troy Nature Center, Troy Kiwanis Club, Troy Rotary, Troy Community Coalition, a youth sports league. The possibilities are endless. City Council is not the only mechanism to contribute to the good of the community. Don't be disappointed on November 8th. Just find a new outlet. With that, I've quoted from a Greek philosopher, the musical Hamilton, and made reference to Ted Lasso, so I'm not sure there's really anything left for me to say, except thank you. I'm going to miss all of you, but I am confident Troy is and will be in very capable hands. Thank you.
Made us all in contempt of our council rules by standing and applauding during a meeting. And that concludes council comments this evening. There are no members of, no one signed up for public comment for items on or not on the agenda for members of the public outside of Troy. We do have a closed session this evening, so at this time we will recess from in here and pick up from the closed session in the boardroom.